I am taking a look at the gutter guards about 2 weeks after we received the last rain. This is Jonathan with Gutter Guards Direct. I am taking a look at the gutter guards about 2 weeks after we received the last rain. We have a pretty good amount of water that's fallen here in the last several minutes, some thunder and lightning, and this is the south side of the garage. So stay tuned and I'll show you what it looks like here. All the debris that you can see behind me up on top of the gutters, a lot of that has had a chance to dry up. Some of it's starting to crack and break away, but a lot of it is pretty firmly in place at this point. So stay tuned and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, we're looking at MasterShield. If as we look at these gutter guards, you're going to see not much has changed in the last week since I checked in. You've got some of the debris still over here on the right-hand side, pretty well positioned, kind of at the leading edge of the gutter guard. Up above it, you'll see some new debris that's fallen or come off the roof. So again, the only primary difference is that it's a little bit wetter out now than it was a week ago. We just had a good rain. It's tapering off at this point. You can see some of the oak tassels and the flowers off the locust tree. A couple random pine needles, both at roof level as well as on the gutter guard. So MasterShield here remains open and available to take in the water. And what I've seen here, it's taking in a good amount of water today. This is LeafFilter. You really can't see the screen anymore. It's all clogged up with debris. Really, the screen itself is not clogged, but the surface area is clogged. So what's happening is because this sits so flat, it's acting like a shelf, and it's just allowing the debris to continue to compound on top of it. So while I believe this will blow away at some point, at the moment, there's so much weight yet on top of it that it's not really having a chance to go anywhere. Then when we step down, you can see how the debris that's kind of dangling off the edge is allowing water to drip off the face or onto the face of the gutter. So drip off the face of the gutter guard at the drip edge there. Some of that is curling around and dripping then off the base of the gutter here. It's really not that bad. You got a little bit at this end. This is the GutterGlove Pro. Now last week when I was up here, most of that screen was covered. So you can see how this stuff dries up. And with the amount of rain that we've had here just a little while ago, probably has broken away some of that debris and allowed it to start washing off the top or blow off the top. But the force of the rain was pretty pronounced for several minutes. So you can now start to see that self-cleaning aspect of the screen. And that's been one of the things that has been promoted with the micro mesh, that if the screen is fine enough, it has a self-cleaning quality to it. So while you might have stuff sitting on top of it for a period of time, just like this system does, eventually the stuff will wash or blow off the top. So if you look at the top of this screen right now, we have about this much area, 3 inches or so, that is the gutter guard. We probably have another 3 or 4 inches above that that is the roof shingles itself. You can see the edge of the roof shingles there with the debris also on top of it. So you have a fair number of leaves, pine needles, oak tassels, and some other stuff that has come off the trees since I was last up here a week ago. When we step down, you can see how some of that stuff has kind of pasted itself to the front edge of the gutter, and then you can see the water dripping off the bottom Some of this is just water that's hitting the face of the gutter itself, and that's generally where you see these water droplets that are just kind of hanging out, and those will slowly drip or slowly drop off the bottom of the gutter. Where you see a quicker drip is generally where you've got water that's transitioning from the upper portion of the gutter off the gutter guard across the face of the gutter and then down to the bottom. This is Leaflock. Like GutterGlove Pro next to it, has a fair bit of debris still up at the roof level. So that says to me that nothing's really moved that much. You can see some of the screen through here, but there are spots where you can see screen and there are a lot of spots where you can't see any of the screen. So in this case, you see a little bit more of the screen in the middle, and then you get it back out to the edges a little bit and it gets just more debris again. You'll see some of the debris that's hanging over. So we have mostly oak tassels and some pine needles that are hanging over the edge. As I step down, you can see how some of that debris has pulled around the face of the gutter and is sitting there. And then if we come down to the bottom, you can see the quicker dripping off the base of that. So that quicker dripping is indicative, and you can, if I just focus in on this area here, you might be able to see the actual water channel where the water's coming off the top, coming around the face of the gutter, and then it's just dripping off the bottom of the gutter. So that quick drip is indicative of water coming off the gutter guard itself around the face of the gutter. So in this particular case, it seems to be around the downspout where we're seeing more of the quick drip. And if you look up at the top, you can see those tassels there that are hanging off the edge, allowing the water to come around the face and then drip off the bottom of the gutter. Now we're looking at the diamond mesh screen. Last week, as you may recall, this thing was packed with debris, the flowers from the locust tree. You can see really not much has changed. You can see just a smidge of the screen. So a little bit has blown or broken off the screen, but the vast majority of this thing is still covered up. Down at this end, it's really bad. You can see the fracture though between the roof line and the gutter guard, so you can kind of see the natural break where the debris is sitting above it on the roof side, and then on the screen itself on the gutter guard. When we step down, and the rain has slowed considerably, you can see how some of the water is coming off. Now at this moment in time, it all looks pretty good because the rain has mostly stopped. At a drizzle at best, it seems to be doing okay. Again, you can see some of the water that's coming over where the oak tassels are. And then it's driving the water to the back of the gutter guard. You can see it continue to drip off the back of this. And there are several spots to the left of the downspout where that's occurring. It's not happening as much here to the right side as it is to the left. This is LeaFree, the only solid gutter cover in our current test. You can see the top of it is pretty clear. A little bit in the way of pine needles, oak tassels, but all the flowers, or most of the flowers, have broken away from the roof where you can see them still sitting up at roof level. Most of the stuff that was on top of this, which was really never a whole lot, because the roof surface is so smooth, the gutter guard surface is so smooth, didn't really provide the resistance for the flowers to catch on to it and just sit there. But you can see when it's wet, everything gains weight and it is more likely to sit up top. You can probably also see some of that water slowly coming around the edge and going inside. But the real failure of this system is that small debris getting inside the opening of the gutter. So there you can see the gutter guard, and all that debris is starting to collect in the opening. Debris that's either sitting in that nose or potentially has gotten inside the gutter. And we don't know yet how much has gotten inside because we haven't opened this thing up. As I've said, we're going to wait until all this debris eventually dries up and blows away before we do anything to determine how much water has gotten inside the gutter. But here you can see where the debris is sitting along the edge or inside the channel, how the water is dripping off the bottom. So like the micro mesh systems, it's still allowing water to drip off the base of the gutter. There's not a huge amount, there's a couple spots, 3 spots. Now on the north side of the garage, and I'm looking at MasterShield. So the rain has pretty much stopped. You can hear a little bit of it coming down, but really most of it's gone away for the moment. A little bit of thunder in the background. You can see there's just a random leaf, small twig, a couple of oak tassel. There are a few pine needles, and then the remnants of the flowers off the locust tree. If we look up the roof line, you can see the leaves that have come off. So most of the system is available to take in the water. If we step down on the MasterShield, you can see a little bit of debris at the face of it and a little bit of water at the bottom. Most of that water is just water that's hitting the face of the gutter, coming around to the bottom. You don't really see anything in terms of dripping. Here we're looking at LeafFilter on the north side of the garage. You can see the leaves that have come off the roof have landed on top of this. We've got a buildup of pine needles that's occurring. Some of the oak tassels. You can see a little bit of the screen down at the right end that has maybe appeared in the last week. But it's still predominantly full of leaves and debris. The locust flowers are making up kind of the dark stuff that you see at the base layer. And then this yellow and green is stuff that's fallen in the last week. I seem to recall last week we had that leaf up there off the locust tree, that little stem with the leaves on it. That's still hanging out there. Leading up to today, it's been pretty dry and pretty calm out. So as a result, you can kind of just see the stuff that's hanging on top of the gutter guard LeafFilter. The rain is starting to pick up a little bit, but not much. So if we look at the face, it's clean. Got a little bit of debris across the face of it, so that drip edge is definitely helping out here on the north side to push some of the stuff that's sitting at the top level. You see this here, you got a pine needle and some oak tassels and a leaf. As the rain starts to pick up, you start to see how that water follows the path across the gutter guard, hits the debris on top, and then follows the path of least resistance off the debris. In this case, the pine needles and the leaves and the oak tassels, and you can see how that stuff drips off the face of the gutter. Now, since this has a little bit of a built-in drip edge to it, you can also see in this case how it's pushing most of that stuff away from the face of the gutter. So instead of the water transitioning off the gutter guard, hitting the face of the gutter, and then dripping down to the bottom, if we come to the bottom, you'll see just a few water droplets at the base of this with no real dripping. So any of the droplets that are here currently have mostly come from water that's hitting the face of the gutter itself. And the dripping that we're seeing currently is happening where the debris is just hanging off the edge of the gutter guard and allowing the water to drip off that debris itself. Here we're looking at leaf solution. You can see there's a reasonable amount of screen that's exposed. Some of the debris that's sitting on top still. This system has a couple of downward dips or a couple channels in it. So you can see here, like if you look from here to here, you can kind of see a line of stuff where the screen is available on the bottom side of that and the top side of that. And that's where those downward dips exist. So those channels have gotten clogged up with the debris, but otherwise you can see some of that screen that's exposed across the face of it. If we compare it to LeafFilter next door, you can see we're up at an angle here. So some of the leaves that have landed on top of LeafFilter, while there are a few up here on leaf solution, most of those have been able to get knocked off by either the water or the wind. Here you can see the buildup of the oak tassels and some of the pine needles, and then that stuff is just kind of hanging out at the edge of the gutter. So as we step down on this system, you'll see just how much dirtier the face of the gutter is. And then you can also see some of the dripping down below. So, on the north side, this has tended to fare worse with some of these systems in terms of the amount of debris that's going across the face of the gutter. The leaf solution, because it doesn't have a drip edge like MasterShield and LeafFilter do, it's allowing some of that debris in the water to come around the face. Here you can see the water is dripping off the base. The rain is pretty minimal at this point. I would call it kind of a drizzle. And yet you can see how the water is coming across the face of the gutter guard, down the face of the gutter, and then dripping off the base of the gutter. Here is Leaflock on the north side of the garage. You can see a little bit of screen peering through the debris, but there's still a fair bit of debris on top of the gutter guard. You can also see the addition of some of the pine needles and the leaves that have been working their way down the roof. And then you can see how some of those pine needles are just hanging off the edge of the gutter guard. Gutter guard is hanging out at the face. You can see a decent number of those locust flowers, some pine needles, and other small debris across the gutter guard, across the gutter itself. And if we come down to the bottom, you can see some dripping occurring where, like in this case, you've got this little stem. It's kind of affixed itself to the face of the gutter. The water's just following that path of least resistance down to the bottom, and you can see it dripping off the bottom. So in this case, it's doing a pretty good job. I got a little bit of water dropping. If you look at the back here, you can see a little bit more water dropping off there. But by and large, it's doing a pretty decent job. This is GutterGlove's DIY gutter guard. You can see maybe a little bit more of the screen is visible today than it was last Sunday. That's likely because enough of that stuff is dried off at the base level, enough of those flowers are dried off that it's either allowed it to blow off the top, wash off the top, or kind of push its way forward. You can see a lot of the pine needles that have fallen and some of the leaves that are sitting on top of the gutter guard. So anytime you see more yellow or green, that's indicative of stuff that has just fallen off the trees or is coming off the roof onto the gutter guard surface itself. Naturally, when it's wet, it gains weight and it's more prone just to sit up there. If we come down to the face of the gutter, you can see quite a bit of debris, both, again, the flowers mostly. Some of the pine needles are kind of dangling off the front edge of the gutter. You can see the water droplets forming on the edge of the pine needle right there. But if you come down below, you see a fair bit of dripping. So this system has not fared as well when it comes to the actual rainwater portion of this test. You can see a lot of water that is dribbling off the bottom of it. It's not even really raining very hard right now. In fact, it's really no different than it was on Leaflock and Leaf Solution. So if you look at those videos, you know, you saw a little bit of water coming off the base of them, but overall very little. This one seems to have some sort of a delayed system. So the way the water, I think, is pushing through from the gutter screen itself, and in some cases is either coming over top of the metal, like you can see with the debris that's coming over the top of that metal edge, or it's actually pushing through between the metal of the gutter guard and the top lip of the gutter. It is allowing that water to work its way around the face of the gutter and then drip off the bottom. Here we have the clean mesh micro mesh system. This one looks pretty similar to last week. Fair bit of open screen. So more open screen to the left than there is to the right. This system has done a pretty good job with the debris. So of the systems over here, it's doing the second best. MasterShield's #1, and then this one is currently running #2. It's been pretty consistent from the get-go of this testing, but its failure point really has been the rainwater portion of the test. And if I step down here, you can see kind of how the debris has come around the face of the gutter, and we have a combination of leaves, the flowers off the locust tree, some pine needles, and right now we're really not getting much in the way of rain coming out of the sky, so you're seeing a little bit of dribbling off this system. In this case, mostly at the back, so it is working its way across the face of the gutter, coming around the base, working its way to the back, and then it's just dripping off the back. This one, I would say right now, is pretty consistent with what I'm seeing on the GutterGlove product. We're starting to see some movement on the debris that's been sitting on top of the gutter guards.